Gold is dominating at the moment, but when gold starts to go near parabolic, I would expect silver to just overtake and just ignite. And silver is quite some way behind, but when it runs exceptionally. So again, you need a bit extra patience for silver, but you're already starting to get exactly what you need in gold. You're getting the new highs in gold, and it's only time, in my opinion, before silver follows up to that $40, $45, $50 range. That's a key zone for us. At that point, I would expect a reasonable pullback potentially, but if the proliferation is at full speed ahead, we'll blast through that in good order.
In a dazzling resurgence, gold closed 2023 at $2,063 per ounce, marking a remarkable 13% surge. This surge was fueled by anticipated central bank rate cuts, especially from the US Federal Reserve, and heightened safe haven demand amid tensions in the Middle East. This outstanding performance signifies gold's first annual gain in 3 years, highlighting its resilience as a premier investment in an ever-evolving economic landscape. The surge in gold prices was bolstered mainly by expectations that major central banks, particularly the US Federal Reserve, would initiate interest rate reductions early in the year, marking a shift from an aggressive rate hiking cycle that commenced in early 2022. Francis Hunt shares insights about gold and silver, emphasizing gold's role as an indicator that often mirrors unsound monetary principles. When faith in fiat currencies and debt-based systems diminishes, especially among other nations, influential figures like financial CEOs and entire nations begin acquiring gold. Francis asserts that the media, including financial journalism, tends to downplay gold's significance. Gold's performance usually garners limited headline attention unless it reaches extraordinary milestones, potentially due to reporting biases. He foresees dismissive labels like bubble, but believes the real economic bubble resides in debt, with gold acting as a hedge against it. While gold currently leads market movements, silver could outperform in the long run. Silver prices eased to around $24 per ounce and were on track to close 2.4% higher in a volatile 2023. This was supported by a weakened dollar and decreased yields, as recent data from the US and Europe solidified beliefs that major central banks would commence their rate-cutting cycles early in 2024. Lower interest rates make non-yielding assets more appealing and boost their industrial potential. Francis also correlates interest rate movements with the performance of gold and silver, noticing spikes in the gold-silver ratio alongside bullish bonds and falling bond yields. When trust in bonds declines, interest in gold and silver rises, often indicating higher prices for both when the gold-silver ratio decreases. We will present clips from Francis Hunt's interview with Soar Financially. But before we do, if you want more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more updates. Thank you and enjoy the video.
So gold essentially is the canary in the gold mine about unsound money principles. And when people stop believing in debt and fiat and they start moving it, particularly the other nation states that know the game more than the citizens, who typically are the first movers, they know far more than you let on. And of course, big financial CEOs in banks, they start buying gold, and the Fed and the financial journalistic press are incentivized not to highlight that point. So before this very good question you asked, at the last day of November, I said, currently a headline not put in any American circular will be the fact that you've just closed at an all-time high on a monthly charts close. And I expect the same for this week. In short, until gold does something fabulous, it'll get a cursory mention, because to ignore it forever will look too much like abject intent. So they might do a cursory mention, but then have some opinion guy that says it's a bubble, it's going to blow off, some kind of nonsense like that. When in actual fact, the bubble is debt and gold is the response and is the final holdout point. And that's invariably, I would anticipate those kind of gaslighting and reframing taking place in due course after gold starts to get into the mid-2000s. So longer run, silver outperforms. While you're still in the early stages, gold outperforms. However, the gold-silver ratio, in our opinion, which is in the mid-80s, I'm just going to check a chart. I'm looking down while I speak to you because I want to get the update, because there's actually quite a big move on gold, which is not being reciprocated on silver right now. So again, gold's still the leader generally in the move, and that will point to institutions, hedge funds, central banks. Those are the deep pockets. They don't want storage with mega warehouses and costs. You can get a lot of value in gold in a smaller pace. So the big money chases gold, but the people's money is silver, as many people like to say, or silver, but you're already starting to get exactly what you need in gold. You're getting the new highs in gold, and it's only time, in my opinion, before silver follows up to that $40, $45, $50 range. That's a key zone for us. At that point, I would expect a reasonable pullback potentially, but if the proliferation is at full speed ahead, we'll blast through that in good order. And longer run, I'm seeing a 30s gold-silver ratio and eventually a single digit. So it's part and parcel. And that can be, I want to make this important point as well as part of your question, that can be coinciding with that interest rate spike that I am mentioning. So I want to point out the eventual capitulation of rates in the March of 2020, when everyone was in bonds, and the bonds were super valuable, and the rates capitulated to 0.3% on the 10-year in America. That was the super spike on the gold-silver ratio of 128. So these two are the yin and yang. When the one goes dark, the other one goes light. They are coincident in the major events. So when people are peak bullish bonds, they're not holding gold and silver. When they're prepared to take 0.3% yield a year for an investment, they're not thinking gold and silver. When they no longer have any confidence in bonds, they're absolutely thinking capital preservation, and they're only thinking about gold and silver. So the two events coincided, the blow off in the gold silver ratio to 128 and the capitulation in yields, which was a super final end, a bookmarking end to the bond bull market. And it was a bookmarking blow off end to the gold silver ratio. And with lower gold silver ratio, you can only expect higher gold and even higher silver. So you're going to have to wait a bit more for the silver, but you get in your gold rewards already, and the silver comes.
The Federal Reserve announced it would maintain interest rates within the 5.25 to 5.5% range after its December 12, 13 meeting. Traditionally, lower interest rates hike the value of debt, attracting potential investors toward bonds as a safer investment. But Francis wonders about the future buyers for this debt. While bond yields have slightly turned around, major players like China and the BRICS nations aren't big purchasers. Instead, countries like Japan and Britain, linked to the Western central banking system, seem to be the primary buyers. Japanese investors heavily invest in US government bonds, and any move away from negative interest rates in Japan would likely dampen that demand. This raises questions about Japan's commitment to buying other nations' debt, despite its significant debt and economic challenges. Emerging economies shifted to gold amidst dollar weaponization sanctions, buying around 5,000 tons collectively. China, Russia, and India notably acquired significant amounts. Francis highlights the trend of securing gold reserves domestically, reducing reliance on the US dollar and treasury bonds. Let's get back to the interview.
Well, who's going to be buying the debt? Because remember again, here's your thing. Rate go down, that's my hand. Rates go down, debt valuation go up. That's my elbow. You want a fulcrum here. Do you want to buy bonds? Well, if they convince enough people that they're understating how much they'll cut and they'll be forced to do more, that as a flight to safety this time, people will go to bonds. But the gold market's the one that's going up. And the bond market, yep, you've had a bit of a turnaround on yields, but who's buying it all? It's not China. It's certainly not the BRIC nations. So it's a sort of allies of the Western old world order, Japan and Britain, which are essentially part of the same central banking cartel of the Western axis. Go watch our video with Prof. Werner on how Japan is essentially dictated to by the Fed, the Bank of Japan, the Federal Reserve, following the World War II peace agreements. So they co-opted into sustaining, and they tied to the mast, let me use the phrase, the same Western mast, and they now are the alleged buyers. Why would Japan, who's buried in debt, that has had yield curve control until recently, and has even more debt and lower rates, commit to buying other parties' debt? Surely the sound investment is that which is currently being made by Russia and China, which is in gold. And central banks have been massive buyers this year. By the way, add that to your first question, the theme of the debt, the penny dropping on the debt. Purchases by the big players that are not tied to the mast of the Western scheme. And China and Russia's purchases of gold and many other central banks has been very, very high. Plus repatriations of gold to the likes of the Dutch and other people, all very important. Suddenly everybody wants to know where their shiny metal pet rock is that Paul Krugman speaks about, and wants it preferably in their own backyard rather than somewhere else. And others are quite happy to relieve you of your pet rock and hand you dollar promissory notes, whether they be dollar bills or sell their treasuries for dollars and buy gold. And this is why we're going into the year with it at 2083, looking like it wants 84. And as I'm currently looking, we're on a weekly. If it were the clock to stop, we will do remember we did our highest monthly close on gold. The last time we spoke, you said the video had the strapline, patience of a monk required. You're starting to get those rewards for your patience, and it's 6 months since we spoke. You're going to get not only the highest monthly of November's close against the dollar, but you're now looking good for the best weekly close at the moment. And, we've not got too many days left in this week for it to hang on, and it's looking quite perky indeed.
Gold had a roller coaster in 2023, dipping with the dollar and yields in Q3, then rebounding when they fell in Q4. Looking ahead to Q1 2024, there's anticipation of slower US growth, increasing inflation, and possible Fed rate cuts, setting a bullish tone for precious metals like gold. What are your thoughts on the interview? Share your observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.